The Midnight Files Part 1, The Accidental Discovery, The 67th floor of Sterling Tower hummed with an almost supernatural quiet at 11:43 p.m. Sophia Chen pushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear and squinted at the glowing computer screen, her third cup of coffee growing cold beside a stack of contracts that seemed to multiply when she wasn't looking. 3 weeks. That's how long she'd been Marcus Sterling's executive assistant, and already she understood why the position had a turnover rate that would make a revolving door dizzy. The man was brilliant, demanding, and about as warm as a glacier in winter. But the salary was too good to walk away from, especially with her mother's medical bills mounting. Just finish the quarterly reports, she muttered to herself, clicking through folders with names like Q3 projections and board meeting notes. Her eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, but she was almost done. Just one more file to review. She double-clicked on a folder labeled Personal Archive MS, thinking it contained more business documents. The password prompt surprised her, but her fingers automatically typed the company's standard access code. Marcus used it for everything, she'd learned. The folder opened. What she found wasn't quarterly projections or merger documents. Instead, her screen filled with dozens of files containing what appeared to be letters. Her cursor hovered over one titled Jamie Unsent 042318. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Jamie, it's been 5 years since the accident, and I still can't drive past that intersection without seeing your face. Everyone says I should move on, that it wasn't my fault, but they don't understand. You were supposed to be at MIT, not in that car with me that night. You were supposed to become the doctor, remember? You were supposed to save lives, not lose yours because your big brother wanted to celebrate landing his first tech contract. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't business correspondence. This was raw, private pain. She should close the file immediately, but something in the words held her captive. The Marcus Sterling she knew was all sharp suits and sharper words, a man who could command a boardroom with a single glance. This letter revealed someone entirely different. She opened another file. Thomas Betrayal, Joe 91520. I trusted you with everything. The company, my dreams, my friendship. We built Sterling Tech from nothing, working 18-hour days in that cramped apartment, living on ramen and ambition. When you sold our prototype to Nexus Corp behind my back, you didn't just steal my work. You stole my faith in people. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through more files. Years of unsent letters, each one a window into wounds that had never healed. Letters to his deceased brother, Jamie. Letters to Thomas, his former business partner who had betrayed him. Letters to parents who had pushed him toward success but never toward happiness. The elevator chimed in the distance, its sound cutting through the silence like a knife. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor, confident, measured, unmistakably belonging to Marcus Sterling. Panic flooded Sophia's system as she frantically tried to close the files, but her nervous fingers fumbled with the mouse. Sophia? His voice carried across the office, closer than she'd expected. I forgot my presentation notes. What are you still doing here? The screen still displayed his most recent letter, dated just 3 days ago. A letter addressed to no one. Titled simply, Alone. Sometimes I wonder if this is all there is. Money, power, respect, but no one to share it with. No one who sees past the Sterling name to whatever's left of the person I used to be. Jamie would laugh at what I've become. Thomas would say I deserve it. Maybe they're both right. Sophia, Marcus's voice was right behind her now. She spun around in her chair, her face burning with guilt and embarrassment. Marcus Sterling stood 3 feet away, his usually perfect appearance slightly rumpled from a late dinner meeting. His dark eyes moved from her flushed face to the computer screen behind her, and she watched as understanding dawned across his features. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled with secrets that were never meant to be shared and trust that had been accidentally shattered. Sophia opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, to somehow undo what had been done. But Marcus spoke first, his voice carrying a dangerous quiet that made her blood run cold. You've crossed a line, Sophia. The confrontation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sophia watched Marcus's jaw tighten as his eyes remained fixed on the computer screen behind her, where his most private thoughts lay exposed like an open wound. She had never seen him look so vulnerable and so dangerous at the same time. "Mr. Sterling, she began, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "How much did you read?" His voice was steady, controlled, but she caught the tremor underneath, not anger, but something far more fragile: fear. Sophia stood slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I thought it was work files. The folder was labeled as an archive, and I was just—" "How much, Sophia?" He stepped closer, and she could see the storm brewing in his dark eyes. "The letter about Jamie? About Thomas?" His voice cracked slightly on his brother's name. She nodded miserably. "I'm sorry. I should have closed it immediately when I realized, but you didn't." It wasn't a question. Marcus moved around her desk with predatory grace, closing the laptop with a definitive snap. "You kept reading?" "About my brother's accident. About my business partner's betrayal. About every failure that shaped the man you see before you." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Sophia expected him to explode, to unleash the legendary Sterling fury she'd heard whispered about in the company hallways. Instead, he turned away from her, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city below. "Do you know what it's like?" he said quietly, his back to her. "To have everything you've ever worked for built on the graves of people you failed? Jamie died because I wanted to celebrate. Thomas betrayed me because I trusted too easily. My parents pushed me toward success because love wasn't enough." Sophia remained frozen by her desk, unsure whether to flee or stay. "Mr. Sterling—" "Marcus," he corrected, still facing the window. "I think we're past formalities now, don't you? You've seen inside my head. You know things my therapist doesn't know, things I've never said aloud." He turned back to her, and the raw pain in his expression nearly broke her heart. "So tell me, Sophia, what do you do with that knowledge?" She took a shaky breath. "I don't know. Neither do I." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you know how many people would kill for the information you just accidentally stumbled upon? Personal details about Marcus Sterling's weaknesses, his failures, his fears?" He moved closer again, and she could smell his cologne mixed with the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin. "You could sell it to the tabloids. Use it as leverage. Destroy me. I would never—" "No," he said, studying her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "I don't think you would. And do you know what terrifies me about that?" She shook her head. "Because it means you're different, and different people in my life have a habit of either dying or leaving." His voice softened to barely above a whisper. "So what are you going to do, Sophia? Are you going to run? Quit tomorrow morning with some excuse about a family emergency? Because I wouldn't blame you. Working for a broken man isn't exactly what you signed up for." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Sophia looked at this powerful man who controlled boardrooms and commanded respect across 3 continents, and saw something she had never expected. Loneliness so profound it took her breath away. "You're not broken," she said quietly. "You're human." Marcus stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. "Sophia, everyone grieves, Mr. Marcus. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone trusts the wrong people sometimes." She took a small step toward him. "The difference is, not everyone writes letters they never send. Not everyone carries that pain alone. You don't understand? Then help me understand." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. "Instead of pushing me away, instead of assuming I'll abandon you like everyone else, maybe try trusting someone for once." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The city sparkled below them through the windows, full of people living their own complicated lives, but in that office, there were only 2 souls recognizing something unexpected in each other. "You should go home," Marcus said finally, but his tone had lost its edge. "It's late. So should you," Sophia replied. "When was the last time you left the office before midnight?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I don't remember." "That's what I thought." She gathered her purse and coat, but paused at the elevator. "Marcus, those letters you write, maybe someday you'll find someone worth sending them to." As the elevator doors closed between them, Marcus remained standing by the window, wondering if perhaps, just perhaps, he already had. Walls coming down, 3 days passed in careful politeness. Marcus said good morning, Sophia responded professionally. He gave instructions. She followed them efficiently. They danced around each other like strangers who had accidentally shared too intimate a moment and didn't know how to proceed. But small things began to change. On Thursday morning, Sophia arrived to find a fresh cup of coffee waiting on her desk. Not the cheap stuff from the break room, but the expensive blend from Marcus's private machine. When she looked up questioningly, he was already buried in paperwork. But she caught the slight flush on his neck. "Thank you," she said to the top of his head. "It's nothing," he replied without looking up. "Can't have my assistant falling asleep during important calls." That afternoon, when Marcus's lunch meeting ran long and she noticed he'd skipped eating again, Sophia ordered his favorite sandwich from the deli downstairs. She left it on his desk with a simple note: "Fuel for the Empire." When he emerged from his conference call an hour later, the sandwich was gone and a different note sat in its place. Empires fall when their rulers forget to take care of themselves. By Friday, the ice had begun to thaw completely. "Sophia," Marcus called from his office, "could you come in here for a moment?" She found him standing behind his desk, holding a thick folder. "I need you to review these contracts for the Morrison acquisition. It's sensitive material. High-level clearance required." She accepted the folder, noting how his fingers lingered a moment longer than necessary when their hands touched. "Of course. Is there anything specific I should look for?" "Just your honest opinion. Sometimes fresh eyes see what experience misses." He paused, then added quietly, "I've learned recently that perspective can be valuable, even when it comes from unexpected sources." As she worked through the contracts that afternoon, Sophia realized Marcus was testing her again. Not her discretion this time, but her judgment. The Morrison deal looked profitable on paper, but buried in the fine print were clauses that would hurt Sterling Tech's smaller competitors. The old Marcus might not have cared, but the man who wrote anguished letters about his failures might. She knocked on his office door at 5:30. "The Morrison contracts," she said, setting the folder on his desk. "Financially sound, but ethically questionable. Page 17, subsection C, you'd be putting 3 smaller firms out of business." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her. "And that matters to you? Doesn't it matter to you?" She met his gaze steadily. "The Marcus I read about in those letters wouldn't sleep well knowing he'd destroyed other people's dreams." Something shifted in his expression. "You're right." He reached for his phone. "Cancel the Morrison acquisition. Tell them we're pursuing other opportunities. Just like that, just like that." He stood and walked to his window, the setting sun casting long shadows across his face. "My brother wanted to be a doctor, you know, to help people. He used to say that success without purpose is just expensive emptiness." Sophia joined him at the window. "He sounds wise." He was 19. Marcus's voice was thick with old grief. 19 years old and already understood things it took me decades to learn. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city transition from day to night. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "I haven't talked about Jamie to anyone in years. My therapist gave up trying. My few remaining friends learned not to mention him." He glanced at her sideways. "Why is it easier with you?" "Maybe because I'm not trying to fix you," Sophia said softly. "I'm just listening." "Is that what you call accidentally reading my private letters?" She felt her cheeks burn. That was different. "That was the best thing that's happened to me in years," Marcus finished quietly. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they were ready to cross. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she processed his words. "Marcus, I know it's complicated," he said quickly. "I know there are professional boundaries, power dynamics, a dozen reasons why this is impossible." He turned to face her fully. "But for the first time since Jamie died, I don't feel completely alone. And I owe that to you." Sophia looked into his eyes and saw not the intimidating billionaire who commanded boardrooms, but the broken man who wrote letters to ghosts. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and placed her hand over his. You don't owe me anything, she said. But if you want to not be alone, I'm here. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. Are you sure about that, Sophia? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to just being professional. She squeezed his hand gently. Some lines are meant to be crossed. Outside, the city sparkled with a million lights, each one representing dreams, hopes, and hearts taking chances on love. Inside Sterling Tower, two souls began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had found their way home. Love in the shadows. 2 months later, Sophia had learned to read Marcus's moods in the set of his shoulders and the rhythm of his breathing. She knew he took his coffee black when reviewing financial reports, but added cream when he was nervous. She knew he touched the small scar on his left hand whenever someone mentioned his family, and that he kept a picture of Jamie hidden in his bottom desk drawer. What she hadn't expected was how naturally they had fallen into something deeper than employer and employee, something more profound than friendship. "You're staying late again," Marcus observed one evening, finding her still at her desk at 8 p.m. "So are you," she pointed out, gesturing toward his office where papers were scattered across every surface. "Besides, someone has to make sure you actually eat dinner." He smiled, one of the real smiles that had become more frequent in recent weeks. "Chinese food again? Unless you have a better suggestion." "Actually, I do." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "There's a place I'd like to show you, if you're interested." 20 minutes later, they stood on the rooftop garden of Sterling Tower, a space Sophia never knew existed. Fairy lights strung between carefully tended plants created an intimate atmosphere high above the busy city. "You built this?" she asked, touching the leaves of a thriving tomato plant. "Jamie did, actually, the summer before he died." Marcus's voice was soft with memory. "He said buildings should give back to the world, not just take from it. After he was gone, I had the groundskeeping crew maintain it, but I never came up here. Until now." They sat on a bench surrounded by herbs and flowering vines, sharing takeout containers and talking about everything except the electricity that sparked between them whenever. Their hands accidentally touched. "Tell me about your family," Marcus said as they finished. "Eating." Sophia tucked her legs beneath her. "Not much to tell. My mother raised me alone after my father left when I was 12. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, and now it's my turn to take care of her." She paused. "The job with you. The salary helps with her medical bills." "Is she sick?" "Early-stage Alzheimer's. Some days she recognizes me, some days I'm a stranger." Sophia's voice caught slightly. "I understand what it's like to lose someone piece by piece." Marcus reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers naturally. "I'm sorry, don't be. She taught me that love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about showing up, even when things are difficult." "Is that what you're doing with me?" Marcus asked quietly. "Showing up despite the difficult circumstances?" Sophia turned to face him, seeing vulnerability and hope warring in his expression. "Marcus, what's happening between us? I know it's complicated," he said quickly. "I know people will say you're after my money, that I'm taking advantage of my position. I know the board would have concerns and the media would have a field day. I don't care about any of that, but I do." Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the garden. "I care because I can't bear the thought of your reputation being destroyed because of me." "I care because I've already lost everyone I've ever loved, and I couldn't survive losing you too." The raw pain in his voice made Sophia's chest tighten. She stood and moved to stand behind him, not quite touching but close enough to feel his tension. "You haven't lost me," she said softly. "Haven't I?" Marcus turned around, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thomas said he loved me like a brother before he sold me out. My parents said they loved me while they pushed me toward achievements I didn't want. Everyone says they love me until something better comes along. I'm not everyone. Aren't you?" His voice broke. "You're beautiful, intelligent, kind. You could have any life you wanted. Why would you choose this? Why would you choose me?" Sophia reached up and cupped his face in her hands, feeling him lean into her touch despite his words. "Because," she whispered, "you're the only person I know who writes letters to people he's lost because he still loves them. Because you canceled a profitable deal, because it would hurt innocent people. Because you built a garden on a rooftop to honor your brother's memory. She smiled through her own tears. Because when you trust someone, you trust them completely, even if it scares you. Marcus closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against hers. Sophia, I love you too, she said, finishing the words he couldn't quite say. Even if it's complicated, even if it's scary, even if the whole world thinks we're crazy. When he kissed her, surrounded by Jamie's garden and the glittering city lights, it tasted like promise and felt like coming home. Finding home. The Sterling Tech Board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. Marcus sat at the head of the polished conference table, facing 12 of the most powerful business leaders in the industry, while Sophia took notes from her usual spot near the back of the room. Before we begin with quarterly reports, Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say, I have a personal matter to address. Board member Victoria Nash raised an eyebrow. Personal matters aren't typically board business, Marcus. This one is. He glanced briefly at Sophia, drawing strength from her encouraging nod. I'm in love with my assistant, Sophia Chen. We've been in a relationship for 4 months, and I intend to marry her. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, as expected, the explosion came. Are you out of your mind? Demanded Harrison Wells, the oldest member of the board. The liability issues alone, not to mention the optics, interrupted Nash. The press will crucify both of you. They'll say she's a gold digger, that you're having a midlife crisis. Let them say whatever they want, Marcus replied calmly. Sophia has more integrity in her little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. She's improved every aspect of this company's operations, and more importantly, she's made me a better man. This is about more than your personal happiness, snapped board member Robert Kim. Sterling Tech's stock price, our reputation, will survive, Marcus finished. Because at the end of the day, this company succeeds because of innovation, integrity, and smart business decisions, not because of who I'm sleeping with. The meeting continued for another hour, with threats of resignation, demands for Sophia's termination, and predictions of corporate doom. Marcus weathered it all with surprising calm, Sophia realized, because he had finally found something worth fighting for that had nothing to do with money or power. Later that evening, they sat in Marcus's penthouse apartment, surrounded by Chinese takeout containers and the aftermath of the day's chaos. 3 board members resigned, Sophia said quietly, reviewing her notes. Victoria Nash is threatening a vote of no confidence. The press has already gotten hold of the story. Marcus reached across the couch and pulled her against his side. Having second thoughts? Are you? She countered. Never. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Though I should warn you, it's going to get worse before it gets better. The media attention, the scrutiny. Marcus. Sophia tilted her head up to look at him. Do you remember what you wrote in one of those letters? The one about wondering if there was anyone who could see past the sterling name to the person underneath. He nodded. I see you, she said simply. Not your money, not your company, not your reputation. Just you, Marcus. The man who grows tomatoes on rooftops and writes letters to his dead brother. The man who canceled a deal because it felt wrong, who learned to trust again despite every reason not to. She smiled. That's who I fell in love with. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. The night you found those letters, he said finally, I thought my life was over. I thought you'd seen too much, knew too much about my failures. And instead you saw me. Really saw me for the first time in years. He cupped her face gently. You want to know what I wrote in my letter that night? After you left? Sophia nodded. Dear Jamie, Marcus recited from memory, I think I've found her. The person you always said was out there waiting for me. She's nothing like what I expected, and everything I didn't know I needed. She makes me want to be the man you believed I could be. I think you would have liked her. His voice grew thick with emotion. I wish you could meet her. Tears slipped down Sophia's cheeks. I wish I could have met him too. You did, in a way. Every good thing I do now, every moment of happiness I allow myself, that's Jamie's influence, channeled through you. 6 months later, they were married in the rooftop garden surrounded by family, friends, and the herbs and flowers that had witnessed their first kiss. Marcus's wedding vows included a promise to write Sophia letters, not unsent ones born of grief, but love letters to be delivered every morning with her coffee. The Sterling Tech stock price did fluctuate. The media did have a field day. Some board members did resign, but in the end, none of that mattered, because in a glass tower overlooking a city full of dreamers, two people had found their way to each other through accidentally shared secrets and deliberately chosen love. They had learned that the best homes aren't built from steel and glass, but from trust, vulnerability, and the courage to let someone see you exactly as you are. And every morning, as promised, Sophia found a letter next to her coffee cup. Not unsent words of grief, but love letters addressed to the woman who had taught Marcus Sterling that some lines are meant to be crossed. Some walls are meant to come down, and some hearts are meant to find their way home.